Quinn, are you there? Quinn?
Well, it's wonderful to see you, Leonard. And this is, for those of you who don't know, this is Leonard Petit, who was my teacher at Rutgers in the Michael Chekhov technique, and who is probably, I mean, not probably, without a doubt, one of the most brilliant teachers I have ever worked with. And what he teaches has stayed with me my entire life, not just in the process of acting, not just what I use in acting, but it has impacted me as a person. My entire life. So this is Leonard Petit. He is a master teacher of the Michael Chekhov technique, and you've been teaching for decades now. And your studio's in New York City. And this, you said that you teach mostly on Zoom now, or almost exclusively on Zoom, but the studio is still going. The physical studio.
The actual physical space.
Yeah,
we left at the height of the pandemic.
sure.
In March, and moved up to Western New York, where we had a retreat center, and we have retreated here permanently. So COVID sort of forced a kind of retirement. So the studio as an entity exists, but no longer in that physical space. And mostly we're working online. So we're calling it the virtual studio. but it's still the Michael Chekhov Acting Studio, and we're still in business and still, producing content, and we're trying to figure out a way to go on in this new world of, sort of like hybrid teaching, where there would be some in-person meetings and also Zoom things, whatever, with me and other people, members of the faculty or part of the community that I'm involved with, the Chekhov community.
So I'll share the, and I'll share the link too, as when I share this video, I'll share the link to your website, which will have all the classes on there that you can take. And it's wonderful actually that it's on Zoom, because like, I want to take your classes again. So, yeah.
They're
well, no, go ahead.
No, they when they're happening, we meet once a week, and it's pretty in depth, and it's a kind of series of pieces. And I'm interested in, there's a concept in the Michael Chekhov technique, one of what he calls the four brothers. It's called the feeling of the whole. And I'm trying to create or transmit a feeling of the whole in every class, but by teaching just a little part of it. So it's an interesting thing that it's possible with Michael Chekhov.
Can you talk about the four brothers? That's one of the things that I've carried with me all these years. And one of the things when you directed me in the play at Rutgers that you directed in The Ruffian on the Stairs by Joe Orton, it was one of the things you said in performance. As we worked in rehearsal, we used exclusively the Michael Chekhov stuff, which I just found revelatory. I mean, obviously in class, I felt my growth as an artist and as a person, but in applying those principles and what we practice to a performance, it was just, mind expanding and altering in so many ways. And one of the things that I remember you told us before every performance was, you don't focus on the actual exercises that you learn, right? You've done that in rehearsal, you've done that in class, and the work you have to trust is inside you, and you leave it at the door. But you said, I want you to focus on one thing in every performance, and it was always one of the four brothers. So, and oh man, it meant so much to me.
So what do you remember of the four brothers?
Well, I think the one that meant the most, so there's a feeling of form, a feeling of the whole, a feeling of beauty, and a feeling of freedom, right?
No, a feeling of ease.
The feeling of ease. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot that one, because the feeling of ease was
the most important one for you.
Yeah, it was the most important one for me. Oh my goodness. And I still use it. And in fact, I also, before I walk on stage or in anything that I'm playing, I use, and hopefully we can get into this a little bit later, but I use an archetypal gesture for the character that I've just wrestled and grappled with, and I've distilled into a single gesture right before I walk on stage. And I remember when I was working on Betrayal, and you were coaching me, you weren't part of the rehearsal process officially, but you were coaching me. I came to you and I was like, I'm having all this trouble connecting to Robert. And one of the things you did was you worked with me on the archetypal gesture. Like, what is his archetype? And what is the gesture?
So I should, before you go on, I should clear up the language.
Okay.
What we were working on was a psychological gesture. That's a tool in the Chekhov technique.
Okay.
Something called the psychological gesture, and we were working on the psychological gesture of the archetype, which was a picture that you could have of the character. And but it's easy to confuse these things, and people always get confused because when we practice psychological gestures, we're working with archetypes, and they could be called archetypal gestures. So there are like 6 gestures that Chekhov gave, which are psychological gestures, but he refers to them as archetypal gestures. But they're not. That's not the gesture that you were working on. You were working on the gesture of the archetype of the character. Whoever, I don't remember what the choice was, but it was
the father.
The father. Okay.
Yeah.
So we try to find a gesture that expresses the father for you,
Yeah.
because it would be a different gesture from me, kind of, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And for anybody else, it would be, but they would kind of be the same in some way. There was something about them that would be the same because the Father lives in all of us.
Well, that's when I explore those with my students, it's what I find. I'm always asking them to find something personal. And what you told me was when you find the right one, it's like the air vibrates. There's something inside you that vibrates, the air vibrates. You just know it's the right one for you.
Yeah.
And that was what I noticed though, is as they went around and created they're all working on the same concept, and or basically the same one. And they're all very different in certain ways. But as you say, there was a core of each of the gestures. And oftentimes it had to do with direction, which direction they were moving in physically in space.
Yeah, that would be similar. But I also need to, fix your language a little bit, because talking about the language of Michael Chekhov, and his language is very specific and very special. And I mean, you use the word personal, that, you need to make it personal. This is a word that we don't really use. This is a word that we move away from. And this is one of the words that separates the Michael Chekhov technique from all other acting techniques that are, very effective ones, Meisner, Stanislavski method. Right. These kind of things are very involved with the personal and the personality of the actor. And this is something that we're not interested in. This is something that we say, we stop there and we work on something that is called the creative individuality. And so the individual and the individuality of the artist is a very different thing than the artist's personality. And so we try to, the personality is a small thing, actually. And it's, how we work in the world and we present our personality, and it's nothing wrong with it, unless you're having some sort of problems, some sort of problems that need to be fixed. But it's not a powerful and effective creative agent, the personality, but the creative individuality is a huge thing. And that's living within us, and it's separate from the personality. And this is a very, very dynamic agent, and has agency within you to create things like psychological gestures and stuff like this.
Can you explain a little bit more about that in terms of how, so I think I'm grasping a little bit about the separation between those two, but is it the way in which you as an artist access creativity, express creativity, examine working on a role or the entire process of acting as a creative individual?
Yeah, it's when we start talking like this, we run into problems in the modern world. So this is what's said about the Chekhov technique, and it was actually in one of the things that you wanted to talk about, you told me, was this idea of the spiritual in the work. And this is not a religious thing. This is not a religious thing.
Right, you're right.
So the spirit is a creative thing. The spirit of the human being is a creative thing, and the creative individuality is connected with that spirit. And this is what we work with. The personality is connected to the world and your world, your social world, and how you operate, and how you want to be seen, and how you want to interact with people. And that's all very good, but it's not really an artistic thing. It's a living thing, So we go someplace to seek out the creative individuality, and that we find is in the spirit of the person. And that contains a lot, this idea of the spirit. It's not religious, when you say the work is spiritual, or working on it in a spiritual kind of way, it's not a religion at all, or it's not mystical or anything like that. It's just sort of an understanding of what makes up a human being and the parts that we want to access and find expression with and through. And they're often surprising, and they're much bigger than the personality. The personality is really locked and limited to how it wants to be perceived and how it wants to perceive, so it's really wrapped up in the ego and this kind of stuff. And we try to, most spiritual practices actually address that business of, separation or denial of the ego. And then there's what else after, if you can let that go, what remains. Much, 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 much more than your ego would let you think, or would ego would let you believe. There's so much more within you. And these archetypes of the father or the hero or the mother or the savior or whatever, they're all living in you in this place where they can be accessed if you, put the right foot forward first.
Yeah.
You step in the right direction.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the things that moves me most about art is accessing, and particularly not just any particular technique or approach, but it's that sense of the community of the human spirit, and that's what we're trying to access ultimately. And the work that I've been the most proud of has always been in the absence of that, as far as I'm able to remove my ego from it, and as far as I'm able to disappear into the story itself and the central humanity of the story. And that's the most important thing to tell. And it's the connection with the audience is what I remember most from studying with you, was that there is a really fundamental connection with the audience that can't be recreated. And it's different with every audience. And it's involved in evoking that in them, that sense in them as well.
Yeah, it's Chekhov is quite eloquent sometimes when he writes. People have written about him. There's also these audio recordings of him speaking to his students in Hollywood about various things, and it's really quite amazing to listen to him. And I used to, when I was teaching at Rutgers, it was a commute for me from Brooklyn to New Jersey. And on my way to class, I would listen to these things in my car all the time. They're still in my iTunes, and when I just shuffle things, sometimes I hear Michael Chekhov again. It's really, really quite wonderful. But one of the things that he talks about, which was really profound for me in understanding what I was doing as an actor, as a teacher, and what the technique is about. And he said, as actors, our job is to give. And what is it that we're giving? And he said, you have no choice but to give everything of who you are. And then if you start to investigate this idea of giving, and then it becomes everything, so that you have some understandings about how you're going to work, and so you give yourself to the technique. You really give yourself to the technique, and then the technique gives you something back. And so you have this thing, which now you must give to the audience. And then the audience receives it, and they give, on a spiritual level, they give you something back. They give you, they give you the thing back, which is why you want to be an actor in the first place, it seems. You want to be able to get this thing, not just applause, but just a communion, a real communion with something. But it all stems from giving, and giving and receiving really are these two sides of this activity. Once you and that at the very end of giving is receiving, and so you have a reason to give, because you're going to get, and the audience gives you themselves. They give you their presence just by coming. They give you their money for the ticket. They give you their attention, and you get that, and then that turns into a giving that you have to give back to them, and then they get that. It's a beautiful idea.
And the idea too, to me, that you can't receive without giving all of yourself. You just can't. That's not how. That's just a fundamental principle of being a human being. And that's the most fulfilling part of living to me, and the most fulfilling part of trying to be an artist.
And I think that Chekhov really is a celebration of the human being.
Mhm.
You know, that's because we're developing in the student, in the actor, a sense of the whole, a sense of the whole being, not just the emotional, thing that the actor can access or whatever. A lot of techniques are really based around that sort of thing, or interpretation of text, and clarity and intellectualism and meanings and all of these things, and that's all very dry in a way,
Yeah.
and the human is trying to catch up with that stuff. The human wants that stuff. So
Mhm.
we train in the Chekhov technique. We're training how to be human beings, fully functional human beings, because those are the people that we have to present. And even if we are presenting people who are not fully functional as human beings, we have to know what's missing in that person, you
Yeah.
know, so that we can express the right thing. I saw there's a wonderful Buster Keaton film called College, and he does all these sports to impress this girl, and he's bad at all of them, but he was good at all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, Buster was good at all the sports. He was a totally physical actor, and played baseball and whatever all the time. And but he would do these like Olympic kind of sports, and he would mess them all up. But he couldn't mess them up as beautifully as he did if he couldn't do them for real.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He had to
he was
understand how you go
demonstrating
off.
what this person didn't have,
Yeah.
but he
Which
had to
is
have.
so deeply moving.
Yeah,
I mean, because we're all missing parts,
sure,
not just characters,
sure,
we're all missing parts,
sure.
And it's the journey of
And
trying to address those that's profound to
and
me.
and for the actor, we have to transform ourselves, our limited selves, the thing into an artist who can do anything, but also into the character that we're portraying. And it's
Mhm.
about transformation. And this is another spiritual piece of the work, is this idea of transformation in these audio tapes that Chekhov has or made or spoke. He didn't make them; somebody else did. He says that is the. He said it's either a conscious or it's an unconscious desire of every artist, especially, he says, I'm quoting him, especially talented actors, to transform.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you talk about the 5 principles that are the principles that underlie the technique itself?
Yeah, there's lots of principles. There are these 5 guiding. He calls them 5 guiding principles. We're going to talk about that, sure.
Yeah, those are the ones that I'm trying to get at.
Right. They're there as a way for you to understand and put into a kind of functional package
Mhm.
the technique. So they're not anything that you can perform. They're
Right.
they're not anything you can actually do, and they're nothing that you can actually teach. You can teach around them, because they're conceptual. You can teach around them and say, well, this, they contain the technique, and I find as a teacher, it's absolutely necessary to know them, to really
Yeah.
know them in your body, but it's not necessary to teach them, right?
Okay.
They have to come out in the teaching, because if you talk about them quite literally, then they become cold. They become a kind of
Mhm.
concept. They become something. But if you know them and work with them really with your whole being as a teacher, then they are imparted into the understanding of the student, or the learning
Makes so
actor,
much sense.
because it's
Yeah.
not possible to do. I mean, we say, like, the first one, the work is psychophysical. Okay, well, okay, but what does that, what does that even
Right. Right.
you can't bring that onto the stage, but you have to bring that onto the stage, as a kind
Right.
of basic understanding, because that's how everything works, and And then if you say it's psychophysical, then people say, well, what are you even talking about? Or, oh, I don't like that term, or this kind of
Sure.
thing, to all these sort of blocks. So we work around it through experience, doing exercises that really bring home this idea of the work being psychophysical. I mean, basically, psychophysical means that the psychology and the body are one thing. And this is the big message of Chekhov's. And in his day, it was crazy.
Mhm.
Everything was this sort of Descartesian kind of thing, is I think I am, therefore I am, right? And
Right.
everything is sort of like mental. And he said this is you can work that way for the longest time, but you're never really going to reach the body unless you pay
Yeah.
attention. And if you do pay attention, you'll realize you're working in the body, all the
Yeah.
psychology in the body, right?
That
So
makes it a lot of
make this
sense.
movement here, make this movement here, make this movement here, this, and listen to it, and make it again, and listen to it, and listen to it, and really shut this off, shut this brain off, and just feel what's happening in the body and receive what is coming to you because you're making a movement. Then we are able to demonstrate what psychophysical means, and that the work is psychophysical, and that this is only one movement. There's this movement and this movement, and as you mentioned earlier, all these moving in certain directions and stuff, they all have a message, but when we come to it in the beginning, the message is silent. We have to learn how to listen with the body.
That's so beautiful. And that's so, yeah. I mean, and it's so fascinating to me just watching you make those simple gestures just over Zoom. There's when I talk just in the rest of my life, when I've tried to either teach on Zoom or even just in a recording of something, there's something of the spirit that's removed. But just watching you right now make those gestures, I can see your life body. Like I can see it. It's so clear, and there's something that just transcends. But
that's just years of having done it. And you said something before we began about the life body. Well, that's kind of then you're coming back to the spiritual aspect of the work, but it's also connected to the psychophysical.
Yeah.
And you said that often your students are struggling with this idea
Yeah.
of the life body and what to do with it, but you have to have a picture of it. You have to have an image of what it means, which means that you have to use your imagination, and your imagination has to tell you that it's there. But your imagination can tell you it's there after your reason actually says, well, I'm standing up because there's something in me, some animating force in me that's allowing me to stand up, because when I'm dead, the life body is gone. I'm not standing anymore, right?
Yeah.
Why am I not standing anymore? Why am I not moving anymore? Or why is that person who's dead not standing or not moving? What's missing here? Something is missing, and I see that it's missing. When looking at a dead animal, or even a dead plant, or a dead human being, it's just like there's something that was there a moment ago. It's not there anymore. And that essentially is the animating force. That is, people talk about it as the soul or something like this, in religious aspects. But something, it's not nothing, right? And if it is something, how can you imagine that? How can you imagine that to be? And can you imagine that working within you? And let's try something to see if you can work with your imagination and actually your physical body to make it happen, to make it come alive, and you can do it in just the simplest way. I mean, you probably are doing it the way that you learned it from me, or just moving your arm or something like this, or moving your head, and then
That's the first step. I work with expansion. Oftentimes, it seems to be something that people can connect with the most, the opposites of expansion and contraction.
sure, they're involved in those things all day long.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. Without realizing it, oftentimes.
Without realizing it. And so, our work as Chekhov teachers, if this is a tool, this expansion and contraction, then we have to make it become a conscious thing.
Yeah.
And as it becomes conscious and you become conscious of what you're doing, everything fits into place. So for me, starting the work is starting to have some experience of the life body and bringing that life body into those two movements of expanding and contracting. That's the beginning for me, but that's not the beginning for everybody who teaches. That's just how I'm going to do it, and because everything is moving from there. That's the base. Expansion, contraction is the base, and the fact that I'm a live human being is the source that's moving me, really.
Yeah, I think, and this is what kind of I want to ask how you approach follow this up a little further, but I found myself lacking in the ability to communicate the imaginative part. And so what I found that people connected with the most was direct experience. And the way that I have sort of found to work with them about this is, as you're moving, as you're working, that the most important thing is to listen to your body, to listen to the experience that's happening in you, to feel that sense of expansion, to feel that sense of contraction physically. What does your body actually feel like in doing that? And that you can recreate that. It's not recreating the experience. it is kind of that something in you expands, whether or not you physically move.
Yeah,
but you can re-experience.
But you have to understand that, and you have to teach that as a doing. It's actually happening. You need to imagine it. Indeed, you have to imagine it, but you don't have to picture it. And so it's another kind of imagination. If you just picture it, then it's weak. But
remember, you said that in your book.
You have to picture it in order to know what it is, right? So we start with the picturing of it, but then we have to move to the doing of it. And then the doing of it is actually then moving the animating force, the energy, using a form, using this feeling of form. And then when it actually is moving imaginatively, it's a movement imagination, not a visual imagination. And especially in the beginning, when these exercises with the arm, lifting the arm, people just want to see it, and they like it when they see it, but you can't see it. You can't really hallucinate that. You can see, I can do it, and you can see what it does to me, right? So it's doing something to me, and I can do it without doing it, and something happens to me because I have the experience of doing it, and I can do it. Everybody can do it, but in the beginning, people just want to, hallucinate this thing that's happening for them, and that just creates a kind of tension and a lack of ease. So already we're missing. We're starting by missing the most important of the brothers, which is the feeling of ease. And because the life body is a thing. It really is a thing, and it will not play with you unless you come to it with a feeling of ease.
I remember that most.
As soon as you put tension in your body, it says, I quit. I'm not playing no more.
That was one of the biggest struggles I had, was, as you mentioned before, a feeling of ease, but it was really about anxiety and tension and the feeling of like, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. And so my life body says, okay, fine.
You get what you wish for, which is nothing. No, I think one of the most difficult things as a teacher of this method is that you have to bring your students around to the simple idea of yes. And yes, something happened. Yes, I felt something. Because initially it's going to be, what do you want me to feel? What do you want me to do? I mean, I was working with coaching an actor who didn't have so much experience with the Chekhov technique, and he was doing some Shakespeare thing or whatever, and he was having problems with his emotional life, and so I said, okay, well, let's work with sensations, physical sensations, as a means to the emotional life or the feeling life, and So I asked him, can you say to yourself, I want to experience the sensation of defeat? And he was, this is very, very comical to me. He's standing up. I'll come back here, right? And
Yeah.
he said, I want to experience the sensation of defeat. And he went like this. And I said, oh, what happened? He said, nothing.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
said, all right, start again. And he did it 3, 4 times. His knees buckled, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, well, what did you feel? You know, and he said, nothing. I said, did you not feel yourself go down? He said, no. So he was like that removed actually from his body. He
Yeah.
was so up here thinking everything is going to come from here, you know, but
Yeah.
physical sensation says right away, it's physical, it's in the body. And
Yeah.
for Chekhov, that's the means to the feeling life, rather than, you know, these sense memories or daydreams or whatever of bringing your own personal garbage into Shakespeare. You know, it's all this personal garbage that you went through is actually still within you. Chekhov says that these things are deprocessed, you know, and they come to us as archetypes again,
Yeah.
archetypes of feeling. So you say something like defeat. This is a downward moving thing. This is the body feels it down. You can see that, you know, when somebody is, you know, just watching a football game, and you see that that they don't score, and they show the coach is just, you know,
Yeah.
his head falls, his chest falls, everything just falls, you know, in this defeat, and you can see the losing team walking off the field, all you know, sort of going down. And so every time you're, you know, defeated in your life, and that could be 1,000 different causes for this, your body was with you, and your body had the experience, and your body remembers the experience of defeat. And it doesn't maybe want to remember the time that your, you know, mother did something to you which caused you a big defeat, and it was so personal and so extreme that you don't really want to remember that. And so
Right.
but that has been processed. If it was a long time ago, it has been processed, and it's living within you, and you can call it up simply by asking for it in the most general of terms. And then the actor who is transforming into the character is going to get the exact defeat that's needed in that moment.
That's beautiful. I
It is.
want to,
It's so beautiful, and it's so free.
yeah. But I've never asked my students to do that, to say, yes, you know, I want to experience the feeling of whatever it is.
The sensation, the
For the
sensation.
sensation.
Because you want to make it clear that it's a sensation. It's a physical sensation, like
Gotcha.
cold,
Yeah.
like cold is a physical sensation, or warm, or love. You know, I mean, you can start in a really physical way, cold. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we did some stuff working with
Yeah.
cold. Remember,
Yeah, we
like
did.
reaching out of the bubble into the cold, right?
Yeah.
This is something that the body knows, you know, and you go outside. I mean, we just had, you know, 5 feet of snowfall here yesterday.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
It's cold out there, you know, and I opened the door this morning to take a photograph, and it was like my body said it's cold. My body told me it was cold. It didn't look so cold. It did because of the snow, but my body said it's cold, you know. Or later today, I'm going to go outside, and it's going to be a little warmer, and my body's going to tell me it's a little warmer than it was this morning.
Yeah.
So the body knows everything. And
Yeah. Yeah.
sensation, Chekhov says, is the door we open to the feelings, to the emotions.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of that's a real mind-blowing concept to me too. And I'm glad you corrected. I'm very grateful that you corrected and adjusted my language on a lot of these things, just because me as a person and as an actor, just for me, I can see how that's going to turn so many things. But the idea that
But you gotta say yes. You gotta say yes. That
yeah,
even if it's the littlest thing, right? If you say yes to the little thing, then it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as you open up to it and say, well, this
yeah,
really is something. This really is a possibility. This is something that's living in me, and this is something that I can feel, and this is something that I can express, and this is something that I can get rid of when I'm done with it. And that's the most beautiful thing. You know, there's no residue here. There's none of that sort of like actorly method residue that can be problematic, you know,
yeah, oh,
for
yeah,
for rehearsals, for all kinds of things, you know.
Yeah. But that idea that everything, that you can begin with a sensation for everything, and even for, you talked about the sensation of defeat, that all of those emotional states have a sensation in the body, and that is sometimes that's the entry into
And this
creating. Yeah,
and there's so many more than just emotional things, but they
right.
are all emotional. I mean, we could say, I want to experience the sensation of standing in the first snowfall of the year, for
Yeah,
example.
right.
This is something very special, very, very
Yeah.
special. And if you give it a minute or less, even, it will come. Yes, yes, I am having this sensation, and it's not like playing,
Right,
making snow angels and stuff like that. That's what people want to do. That's
right.
just all this associative things that connect them with the snow. But it's a physical inner sensation. It's the inner landscape, not the snow falling on the outer landscape. The snow's falling on me, and it's falling all around the first one of the year, and it's just so sensational, and it's so fantastic. It's so astounding, actually. And if you let it be, it comes. And then later you could say, I want to experience the sensation of the third snowfall in April. And that's a whole other thing.
It is
That's
a
a
whole other
whole
thing.
other thing. This is like all this rage and this frustration. Everything else starts
Are
coming
we
up.
done with this?
Are
Yeah,
we done with this? I thought we were done with this, right? And but no, 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 it's here, it's here, it's here. That's a sensation, right? And you can transfer that idea of the third snowfall in April into something very specific. When these
yeah,
things, we practice these things and we come to know them, then we can make choices and expect certain things. And at the same time, if we're really doing it, what we set out to do, it's new and it's fresh and it's here and it's now, and other things might come in besides your anticipation of what it is or your expectation, but that will come too. That's how else are you going to make the choice.
right. I mean, even as you talk about the first snowfall of the year, that sense, I can feel it in my butt, that sense, it's sort of a body sense of wonder and awe and gratitude and joy.
Yeah, yeah.
The
There's
newness
nothing
of it
like it.
all.
There's nothing like it.
No, and then I remember, being in New York City and looking at the, when you're in the first week of May and there's a snowfall and it's this gross, crusty, dirty, burn that's along the side of the street, berm that's along the side of the street. It's just, oh God, it was enraging. But how much time do you spend when you're first working with students in connecting them to the light, to the idea, the physical sensation of the life body, the idea, the non-visual, non-hallucinatory idea of the life body? How much time do you spend with them on that?
I mean, if you're working with the 5 guiding principles,
Yeah,
then all of the work, all of the time is spent on that, even though you're doing
yeah,
something
right.
else. I'm working on a quality of movement, for example, or an image like a stick or something like this. It's all connected to the life body. Everything is connected to the life body. That's why I want to begin there, so that everything can come back to that. Everything has to pass through that. At a certain point, you can stop talking about it, or you can, mentioning the life body, you have other ways of addressing it, just the inner gesture, or the gesture that's not seen. Or can you just, imagine that there's a herd of buffalo, stampeding across your brain. Right? What is that? What is that? Do that. Please do that, And you're working with the life body there. You're working with the imagination there. You're working with the head center there. And you're working with thinking and performing thinking. And at first you don't know. You just kind of like, oh, wow, this is the herd of buffalo just stampeding across my brain.
Yeah,
What does it feel like is going on for you there? And then it's all one all the time. It's all one. And
yeah,
people ask, people said to Michael Chekhov, wow, this is so amazing what you have here, what you've developed. And where do you begin? And he said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where you begin, it's all one. So you want to
Everything
begin here,
activates. You
you
work
want
on
to
one thing,
begin
everything
here.
activates.
That's one of the
Yeah.
guiding principles. That's
Right.
the fourth guiding principle. To work on one is to work on all.
Right. Yeah. And the I'm sort of I'm clear on how the life body is the central core of all of it, but what I guess what I'm really asking is, when someone has trouble with that, or do you come in the first class and try to connect with them with that sensation, so that you can move on and do all of the other work with them that needs to be
I,
done?
I think that the most important work that you as a teacher has to do is to stimulate the imagination in your student,
Yeah.
because that is the central thing. The imagination is the central thing, you know. The experience of the life body can only happen with the imagination. You have to imagine that
Yeah.
you have it, you
Yeah.
know. I have to have this imagination. I can see a living thing and a dead thing, and I can, you know, make that assessment,
Mhm.
but I have to imagine that it's there. And I also have to imagine that I can move it independently of the body, or I can move it with the body, or I can transform it into an image. I can completely change it into an image. You know, I can
Yeah.
take the life body heart. So everything I possess physically, I possess energetically. I possess, you know, as part of the life body. My physical body is a mirror of my life body, or my life body is a mirror of my physical body. Right there's a picture, right?
Mhm.
So it's not just energy, which is a, you know, really loaded word, used quite often now, and people understand, you know, this is energy, that's energy, whatever. But this energy has a form, and it starts with the form of my body, you know, and or your body. For you, it's
Right.
your body. For me, it's my body. And then I have a heart, you know, in my real body, and I have a heart in my life body. And I can move I can't move my physical heart. It takes care of itself, and either it's doing well or it's not doing well. It's not really, you know, under my control. But I can do 1,000 things with my heart. That my life body, you know, I can imagine that my heart is cold rock, you know,
Mm.
or a piece of ice. And if I say yes, it is, then something immediately changes in me. My whole psychology changes, because um, it makes us see how connected we are to the heart in the first place. And and that just a simple new picture of what the heart is. I mean, I remember I was in Shanghai I was invited to go to Shanghai to teach these actors. And when I got there, the man who invited me said, "We're so happy you're here. We're so lucky you're here, because we're kind of stuck in the 1950s Stanislavski kind of idea of acting. I mean, we have, you know, our traditions of the picking opera and all this kind of stuff, but, you know, but for modern acting, we're stuck. And so for you coming here is a real important thing for us, a real big treat." And and so I was trying to work with them, you know, find a way in. And I was trying this, trying that, and it was like, nothing's really happening, you know. So I said, please imagine this, that you're in your heart, you know where your heart is. Can you show me where your heart is? You know, and they put their hand on their heart. Say, okay, everybody knows where their heart is. Can you imagine that within your heart, that there's a hole like this, just going right through your heart? And at first was, well, how did I get that? Did somebody shoot me with a gun? You know, and so they wanted to go into that whole thing of, you know, the fear of being faced with a gun and then being shot and then not dying, but having a hole in my heart. And this is like, no, please don't. Please just imagine that you have a hole in your heart. And the room transformed immediately, because they did it. And it was with the imagination, and it was with the life body, that they caused this thing to happen. And everybody in the room having a hole in the heart caused an atmosphere to happen in the room, you know. And it was and so then you talk about it, you know, and it was like, oh, it was such a great, I felt like it was a great loss that had come upon me, you know, like the love of my life had left, or took a piece of them took a piece of me when they left, or these other kind of, you know, fanciful, wonderful ideas. but it just came from this really objective activity of saying there's a hole in my heart, and you can do a thousand things with your heart, really. All
Sure.
you need is a picture, but then what you realize is how closely connected we are to that organ and that part of the body, and that it's more than just a pump,
Yeah.
much more than a pump.
Yeah. Can you actually, in speaking about the imagination, what it makes me sort of think of too, and I know we've been going for a long time now, and I want to I want to release you from this, but
You don't have to
but it
really.
just,
We can talk about something else, some other part that you wanted to talk about. We can do that.
well, I was thinking about the center. It was stick veil ball. I was thinking about that. And
Why?
is your term for what I remember is psychological centers. I don't know
No,
now.
the term. Well, you're confusing things again,
Okay,
which or conflating.
unsurprising.
Yeah, conflating things. Stickball veil is some images, very particular images that Chekhov came up with, that influenced by something else, which we don't really talk about right now. But what they really were or are a reflection of are types of people. So he tells us that there are three types of people. There are people who think. There are three functions in the human being, right? There's the function of thinking, there's a function of feeling, and there's a function of doing, willing. And so people are probably, people can be thinkers, people can be feelers, people can be doers. To be people, they have to do all these things, right? So
Right.
if a person thinks first, they're a thinker, right? But so they could go through the process psychologically or humanly, through the process of thinking, then having feelings about those thoughts, then doing something about the feelings that they're having, right? Or they could do something and then have thoughts about what they just did, which generates feelings, right? Or they can have feeling about something, and then they do something about that feeling, and then they think about it. This is like, Romeo. He does stuff, then he has all these feelings about it, and then at the end, he finally thinks about it. And so, there are these hierarchies of function that we can work with. I remember the character that we worked on in the play Ruffian and the Stair. I suggested that he was a doer because he was a doer. He did stuff. He didn't think too much. He had a lot of feelings.
He did.
And he thought in the end. He thought last.
Yeah.
And so it was easy then to sort of form a character, and then you can also look at yourself and say, do I do first, or do I think first, or do I feel first? So if you look at yourself and you say, well, this character does things first. He activates his will before anything. I do that too. Well, is that anything like me? Is that anything like me? Oh, maybe it is a bit like me, and I can use that part of myself to bring to the character. Or it's, no, that's nothing like me. I feel before I think. So it's nothing like, all right. Now I'm already drawing away from the character, my personal self, into something else. So it's a kind of clear path that we can take. And just to cut to the chase, the thinking type thinks first, the feeling type feels first, and the willing type does first, right? And the thinking type is represented by a stick, and you can just turn your body into a stick, any kind of stick, and imagine that your life body is a stick. Physical body is not a stick. Physical body's got muscles, bones, whatever, right? But how would a stick move? How would a stick move? And then you find out that you're moving like Barack Obama or something like this, right? Because that man's a stick. Thinking guy. He's a thinking guy, and he moves like a stick. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just is. And there's plenty other people, who move like sticks, and different sticks, different sticks. It could be a big, stump of a tree. That's a stick.
Mhm.
It could be a toothpick. That's a stick, or it could be um,
A riding crop
a
was,
right. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. It could be, I remember Chris, I gave Chris the image in that play. He was the
yeah,
thinking guy, right? In
yeah,
fact, I said, how do we know he's a thinking guy? Because in the play, your character shoots him.
yeah,
And he says, this is so incredible. He said, he shot me, I think, and then he died.
yeah, right, right.
I said, there's no way around this, and
Yeah,
and the woman, the character Joyce, she was hysterical all the time,
yeah.
hysterical. So it's all this feeling stuff. So it was a beautiful structure of having these three types, only these three
Oh,
types
yeah,
in the
right.
play, well represented. So that makes for a good play. And one has to look for those things in interpreting the play. For me, it's one of the first steps in rehearsal.
Yeah, no, and I remember how
So let me
illuminating.
just
Oh,
finish.
sure.
Let me just finish that the stick is the thinker, the veil, which is like a cloth, moves like a veil, like a silk veil, is the feeler, and the ball is the doer.
Right.
And so, if you can inspire students to pursue movements around these images, then there's a lot of fruit there
Yeah.
to be had, And again, it's imagination and it's psychophysical, So we're back to the first guiding principle, basically.
Yeah.
And the second guiding principle you want to know is intangible means of expression lead to tangible results.
Mhm.
Crazy kind of concept. So how do you teach something like that?
Yeah.
You can't, but you can teach people how to develop an atmosphere. And then, the atmosphere is felt by everybody, including the audience. And it's just like, what is this? What is this strange thing? I can't put my finger on what this is, but something is happening because of it. So that's what tangible means, basically, whether you can put your finger on it or not. You can touch it, you can't really touch that. The psychological gesture, or this idea of radiation, this is just this part of giving when we were talking about earlier. This is really what the giving is all about, being able to take whatever is inside and send it out, in a form of radiation. What is that? You can't really talk about it even. You can't put
Yeah.
your finger on it, but something comes of it. Something comes of it for me who does it, and something comes of it for you who witnesses it. And so this is the second guiding principle of intangible means of expression lead to tangible results. And then when you look at the technique, almost all of it is intangible.
Yeah.
Almost all the tools are intangible. I started with this growing here, right? I mean, what is that? That's just a movement. That's a silly movement. There's something that's happening. There's something that's happening to me because of it. Because of all the all the clouds I've seen lifting away from the sun, or all the flowers I've seen opening, or all the hearts I've seen opening towards me, or whatever. That's all this kind of, I know what that is, I know what that is. And so but I can't touch it.
Mhm. One of the things with respect to atmosphere is one of the things you talked about earlier when you were working with the idea of the hole in the heart, that an atmosphere became activated just by everybody doing that same thing.
Yeah.
And that's something that
And they wanted to show me they were doing it, so they were radiating it. Right. And so it was filling the space. It was filling.
yeah.
I mean, I think that they knew they were experiencing my frustration with them,
Mm,
that I wasn't getting anywhere, on the first day. After the hole in the heart, they followed me. Up
yeah.
until the hole in the heart, I felt like I was hauling the whole class up a mountain, follow me. And then by the end, they were running up the mountain, and I was following them. So and it all came
It's
from
beautiful.
that thing.
Oh, it's beautiful. Well, there's so much more that I could talk about with you, and it's wonderful
Yeah,
to see you again.
I like to talk
Um,
about these things.
yeah. Well, it's beautiful stuff. And it's so wonderful to become regrounded, from you as a master teacher. just to become regrounded in the approach and the imagination of the technique, and how important the right words are for the right concepts, because you can't really activate something very well unless it's not just an intellectual understanding. You're like your body understands, like you clarify the language, you clarify the idea, and it clarifies the imagination, and it clarifies the experience in some way.
But that's where the truth is. The truth is in the body, right?
Yeah.
I'm
right.
cold, I'm hot, I got to poop. This is all and this is all the truth, and so everything has to come through the body, and understandings when they come through the body, then it's the truth. And when you do something like, imagine you have a hole in your heart, which is in your body, and then you start to react and react to it. And what comes out of you is the reaction, but nobody knows you have a hole in your heart, right? And so it was an interesting thing. I was in Italy at a kind of conference for Chekhov. I was a presenter. It was an academic thing, and I was presenting the 5 guiding principles. And there was a man there, this Italian man, who was a translator, I guess, and he had translated some letters from Chekhov, and then he was reading them. And in one of the letters, somebody was trying to convince Chekhov to come back to Russia. He had already emigrated, and he emigrated to save his life, basically, because Stalin was going to kill him. And he said, "Why'd you come back? You're artistically, you're spiritually dead in the West. What can you possibly do? And here, you're the greatest. Everybody loves you, and you can live your life here, as a great actor, and continue to do what you do." And then he said, "You know what? I really don't have any interest in going to a place where the world of art, where in the world of art, 2 + 2 = 4. I'm not interested in that, and then, that made me look at his technique, and 2 + 2 never = 4 in his technique. It's always 6, 8, or 9, because these things just, they just like, oh, wow, this thing came out of nothing, I mean, we take two things that we talked about, for example, psychological gesture for the archetype, right? So you say, the archetype is the hero. It's safe, right? Easy. Everybody knows what that means. Everybody can make that gesture, right? And whatever that gesture is for them, the individual, they'll all be the kind of same. If you look at the whole room of people, they're all kind of the same gesture, but each one's got its own little nuance. It's beautiful. And then you say, oh, okay, live with that. What is that giving to you? Move around the room with this energy of the hero, which is coming from the gesture. And so, well, we got people just doing stuff and having fun and, being heroic. Some of it is very cliched, but that's okay. It's totally okay, right? Because they're just kind of like trying to work it out. And you say, okay, you know what that is. Okay, just forget about it for a moment. Now, say I want to experience the sensation of defeat. Now, this is something that we don't normally associate with heroes, defeat, right? So you get this defeat going in the body. And we already said, it's like this downward moving thing. So it's like, so it's like tears falling. It's something. I mean, I grieve, that's more like grief, but it's also a downward moving thing. But it's like this, everything is just sort of, if you tell people that and you say, okay, follow it with your body, everybody ends up on the floor. Everybody ends up on their knees, and they get down over here, and say, okay, great. Now get up, keep it, sustain that, please. Get up, walk around the room, feel what that is. Okay, so you have this sensation of defeat that's living in you. Now return to the gesture that you made of the hero, but let it be led by the sensation that's in your body. So it's got a whole different quality of movement happening now. And what comes is something new. It's not the hero you were a moment ago, but it's this defeated hero kind of thing, which is not readily acceptable as an idea of the hero, But in terms of a play, you could say, yeah, the guy's a hero, but she's over here, they're defeated,
It's such a common story.
It is, But the sensation that arises within you, as where you combine the number 2 of the gesture and the number 2 of the sensation, you're not getting 4, you're getting 10.
No,
You're
right.
getting 10. And it would take you weeks in a normal kind of way to come to this,
Right.
whereas you found it in a minute or less
Yeah.
by using something that Chekhov calls synthesis, which is the opposite of analysis. So we don't analyze things, we synthesize things. And synthesis can only happen in the spirit. The spirit of the human being allows synthesis to take place. That's this higher self, this creative individuality. That's all connected to the spirit, and in that place, that's where these incredible revelations and transformations and whatever useful expressions, arise, and they're very, very unique to you, but they're not personal.
Yeah, that's such a mind-blowing concept, the difference between something that's unique and something that's personal. I'm glad you talked about that in the very beginning, because I think there's a lot of conflation or confusion about that idea.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to mess up the language, and the language is important. I think that Chekhov didn't speak English originally, and so his book is in English, and so the terms are very carefully chosen, and they don't mean this and they don't mean that. I mean, I have a colleague in Germany who, he quibbles. He never studied with anybody, but he studied the book, and he's really a great teacher. But he quibbles with people about things like quality, and he says, no, Chekhov says it's a kind of movement, and so what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's interesting, but we people say like the Four Brothers, for example, they are a feeling of ease, a feeling of beauty, a feeling of form, a feeling of the whole. And then he goes on to say, and they should be feelings, just like anger is a feeling, just like joy is a feeling. They should be there in that realm. And people always, and I don't know how this happens, but people always say a sense of beauty, a sense of ease, a sense of form, a sense of the whole. It's not the same thing, really. A sense of it is not a sensation of it. And a feeling of it is something very, very special, because it's a kind of approach to it, in a sense. It's a feeling. I have a feeling of ease. Can you do this with a feeling of ease, as opposed to relax? You're so tense. Cut it out. Go sit in the chair over there and try to get soft or whatever. But just, can you do this with a feeling of ease? And recently, I was reading something that Chekhov, I don't think he wrote it. I think it was somebody wrote while he was talking, but he started talking about astonishment and the value of it, and how important it is actually for the creative person. And he said, let's just take this. He said, you look at this piece of paper that's in front of you, and you look at it and you look at it, and then you take it away, and then you imagine that this piece of paper is there, and you really have a really clear imagination. He said, is it possible for you to be a little bit astonished by that? By the fact that you can do that, So I took that as a kind of prompt and started to work on astonishment in the last year and a half or so. And it's so important. And as a teacher, I won't work without it anymore. And so I want to tell you, if you're going to teach, to lead students into this idea of astonishment, and even to come to ask them to experience it as a sensation, but to keep bringing it back to the work and saying, isn't this astonishing that by putting a hole in your heart, you have this kind of thing? Is that not astonishing? Can you be astonished by that? Can you make a gesture, psychological gesture, that expresses astonishment? Now, can you have astonishment, that sensation? You just put it in your shoulder, just the sensation of astonishment, or whatever. And it's just, it grows and it grows and it grows, but it's always this kind of expansive, awe-filled kind of thing. and it's about you and your work, you know. So it's power. It's a power, this thing of astonishment. And, you know, you talk about me, you talk about the work we did, and it's all full of astonishment, your report. But you would never say that. If I, you know, you wouldn't say that. I'm astonished by it. But if you start to look at what astonishment is and how it works and the power in it, you take so many steps forward, you know, and your work just becomes easy and beautiful. And, you know, the form is just like, wow, couldn't be any other than this form. And now I do have a sense of the whole, because the world is an astonishing place. You know, it's just a beautiful idea that escaped me from, you know, having read it or whatever as a younger teacher. And it's just come to me in the last year as something that I can actually work with and transmit.
Is that part of activating the yes in people
Yeah,
around
I mean,
this technique?
certainly astonishment is a yes. Is, you know,
Yeah.
yes, whoa.
But it's so specific,
Yeah.
you know, and powerful. Yeah.
And I had on Zoom, I was teaching, and I had my students, you know, work on this gesture of astonishment, work on the sensation of astonishment. And then I said, now just radiate that to me. And it was like I was shaking. It was like, you know, all these little squares and these people just coming through, you know, people from Mumbai and people from Bangkok and people from San Francisco, all on the same video screen or whatever, just, you know, radiating their astonishment to me. It was so great. So
Yeah.
great.
Wow. I would, I'd love to talk to you more about radiation in particular. Perhaps,
Yeah, sure. We can do it again.
there's-
So no
yeah,
problem.
I would really love that. I'd be very grateful for that. Thank you. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time to speak with me about this, and to just to give us your experience, not only of teaching, but of discovering and growing and all of this.
I hope that, you know, it had some illumination and some value for you.
Oh man, so much. Absolutely. Now I want to, I got to get the second edition of your book now. I want to read that. And I got to go back to it. And now actually hearing you talk with such astonishment and love about the things that the recordings and the writings of Chekhov himself. And you've returned to those, I'm sure, many times over the years, things that you've read already.
There's a resource available to you now that wasn't available to me when I was younger, and it's it just happened in the last couple of years. But you can look up online, you know, Google or whatever, Michael Chekhov archives at and maybe you can put like Windsor University in there or something like that. But there is an archive there that was put together by this person was a teacher of mine, but was his secretary, Deirdre Hurst Dupre. And she, when they first met, she was one of two people meeting with him, and she was writing stenography, the interview with him. And he was, you know, he had just learned English, and he was like very curious. And then when he finally decided to work with these people, he said, and you will come with me everywhere and write down what I say. And so she wrote in stenography, all his classes, all this, you know, lectures and whatever. And now it's all available, and it's beautiful because it's all been scanned off of original onion skin typewriter paper, you know. There's, you know, typewriters that you probably don't even know what they are. I don't know, do you?
Yeah. 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 I learned typing on a typewriter.
Okay, so anyway, all these pages have been scanned, and so they have, you know, these sort of like blurry things, and you can see where it was whited out or whatever, but you can you know, just put in a word like heart, or put in a word like psychological gesture or whatever, and then it'll cite all of these things, and there's actual him speaking to students about these things. It's a fantastic resource.
That's amazing.
Michael Chekhov archives.
Michael Chekhov archives.
And I'm involved with a group of people right now, and we're this came out of the pandemic, I sort of convened this group of people that was international. They were heads of Chekhov studios around the world, and I called meetings so that we could talk to each other and see if we could help each other during this time, of when studios were having to shut down because of the pandemic worldwide. Everything was shutting down, and we had a meeting, and then we said, well, should we meet next week? I said, yeah, let's meet next week. And we've been meeting. We continue to meet every week for these 2.5 years. And we're going to come together in the summertime in person and share our research with each other. And it's all going to be videotaped,
Wow.
whatever. And this is all also going to go into that archives. So
Yeah.
we are the theater of the future. We are we're carrying the work forward, transforming it, living it, sharing it, and it's going to be a nice thing. And that will also be our work. There will be a part of these archives.
That's beautiful. That's
We're
incredible.
going to meet in Windsor, actually. But
That's amazing.
we're gonna.
Oh my God.
It's being held in this library, this something Leddy Library in Windsor. This Chekhov archives, but it's free, and anybody can access it. Anybody can go there.
That's amazing. Oh, that's incredible. I'm definitely going to share that. And what's your studio's website? One more time, just so people can
It's
hear it.
michaelchekhov.actingstudio.com.
Okay. Beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'll also share a link to where they can buy your book.
Great. And yeah, send me the link and everything when you get it all together. And
Yeah.
so I'll give it to my my manager, who will do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think now that I'm remembering it, so I'm recording this on Zoom, and I'm going to send this to Ron, who runs our studio, StoryQuest Studios, and he's probably going to have to upload it to the studio's YouTube channel in order to really be able to share it as a link. Are you okay with that?
Sure. Just give us
Yeah.
the information so that we can also
Yep, absolutely.
direct people there, and from our website or whatever.
Well, I'll reach out to you again with some more, so we can continue this if you're okay with that, because I'm
yeah, you've got to digest this.
yeah, no kidding. So I can come back with some more focused and intelligent questions. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you sent me yesterday, it was a lot. I mean, but we actually
Yeah.
touched on most of it.
Yeah, we did. But I'm so glad that it grew organically out of
Yeah,
master like you
just
speaking about
say
it.
now chapter 2, now chapter 3.
Yeah. Right. Well,
It's all
thank you
one
so
thing.
much.
It's all one thing.
Thank you so much, Leonard. It's wonderful to speak with you.
But I didn't say all of the 5 guiding principles.
No, that's true.
So number 1, it's psychophysical. Number
Mhm.
2, intangible means of expression lead to tangible results. Number 3, it's spiritual but not religious, and
Mhm.
it's connected with the higher self. Number 4, to do one is to do all. And number 5 is artistic freedom. Which one of these things gives you freedom? So like I said, you can't really teach that, as things.
No, right.
They have to be living in you, the teacher, so that when you do teach, it makes sense to that. So these 5 guiding principles are what they are, the guiding principles. They're not working principles. They contain the whole of it, from this side, from this side, from this side, from that side, and what's possible with it. But they're not things that can be performed, but the things that refer to them can be performed. The things that are
Right.
connected to them can be performed, but the things in themselves cannot be. It's a living thing inside the teacher, and it's transmitted in such a way that it becomes a living thing inside the student. That's why I put them in the book, so that people could try to understand the technique through them.
Right.
Right.
But they're
Okay.
activated. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Leonard.
Bye, Quinn.
I'll
Nice
talk to you
speak
soon.
Yeah.
Nice to see you too. Bye.